Yeah, so we're roughly now 1,200 people, blue against red.
Yeah.
It's Oracle against SAP, right? This is where you make the money, especially if you only have 2, 3, 4, 5 people. I always recommend getting up to 10 quite quickly because one is on vacation, two are sick, right? And you need roughly 70% utilization to be profitable. So I was always sitting in the lobby or at the hotel bar waiting for those people.
But you technically don't even need a ticket, right? You could just stand there.
I never got a ticket, too expensive. You need to give people the confidence that you are not just another guy, that you really want to make them successful, that you know your shit. Once you establish low rates, it's nearly impossible to increase your rates again, right? Those are the 3 channels you can sell through. Mm-hmm. And each needs to be played a little bit differently.
What are other interesting cultural differences?
They like to do business with their own people. So you have to have a local business partner who helps you sell.
Yeah. You're talking about like Korea or China, Asia in general. We talked about how things in the US are, where you start Waymo, and in Europe, they would probably never agree to that before it's tested. And then Waymo crashes a couple of times into like a street lamp or whatever. And they're like, all right, we have to fix it. So there's more innovation, but at the same time, things just like break faster.
Building the network is based on your content and value proposition. You do hackathons, right? Mm-hmm. So they go much more a content-based route on connecting with people. So hopefully we see more spotification of great minds beside great athletes. Yeah?
Not just GTM hackathon like we host, but I go to like hackathons where we code. And that's where I met founders of pretty large and successful companies who are incredibly smart. And those are people you don't just outreach to.
There's a difference between ready to sell and ready to deliver.
Hi, everybody. I'm with Sascha Maric, who's General Manager of SAP Fioneer Americas. And we're going to have some awesome conversations about GTM and IT consulting sales. Hi, Sascha. Thanks so much for being here.
Hi, Matt. It's a pleasure. Thank you for the invitation, and I'm looking forward to talking to you.
Awesome. Sascha, how about we just get started with SAP Fioneer? Maybe you can just share a little bit more about what you do, what's your role, and a little bit about the company, just so that everybody has a context here.
Okay, sure. So SAP Fioneer is a carve-out from SAP, from the big German enterprise software company, and they decided roughly 3 years ago that they do need to be a little bit more agile in the financial services industry. So they joined up with private equity, and so we are 20% SAP owned, and rest is private equity, and we're purely focused on software for banks and insurances, fintechs, regtechs, and I'm one of the managing directors in the Americas, responsible for product and delivery.
Amazing, cool. So can you just share it, just to paint a picture for everyone of the size of the company, like roughly how many people are in the entire company?
Yeah, so we're roughly now 1,200 people. A lot of them from SAP who came over, but also quite a few new hires. So we are in the process of building up each location. We are, I think, roughly in slightly above 20 nations. We have head offices. We work through SAP in the rest of the countries. And we're trying to build up our delivery centers, get the processes going, try to develop our own DNA. Yeah, it's exciting.
Awesome. So how about we dive in first into just a general landscape of the industry, just SAP, IT consulting industry. If you could just like paint the landscape of where it's going, how it's working now. I know it's a pretty broad question, but just before we talk about sales, SAP sales, starting a company in IT consulting and SAP, maybe you could just kind of lay the picture of the land.
Yeah, sure. I mean, if you look into really big corporate, big enterprise software, there are mainly 2 to 3 big players. One is the US-based Oracle. The other one is the German-based SAP. There are a few more popping up now and then, but for the last 30, 40 years, it basically has been blue against red so often in this life. So
it's a funny way to compare it, actually.
It's Oracle against SAP, right? With SAP having its home field in Germany, and USA is pretty much dominantly Oracle. But if you look then into the specific industries, so they both have very good tools. They both are able to run enterprise-wide software, right? But if you then start looking into the verticals, if it's chemicals, oil and gas, or in my case, FSI, it becomes a bit more tricky, especially around banks and insurances, because regulations become quite quite challenging to comply to per region. So not everything is then basically a nail. I always say SAP sells a hammer, right? And every problem they see is a nail. But in some regions or in some industries, you need to be a bit more specific. You have to have broad understanding of the industry and also of the software and how both can work together. So we're doing a lot of transformational space between customer and the software.
So let's just dive into GTM and IT consulting and sales. I mean, a lot of people watching this, they are running a small company. They typically worked within SAP realm, and they were or used to be working as an IT consultant somewhere, and they start their small SAP consulting company.
Yeah, sure, but I probably not rely so much on my Fioneer background in this case. But I just joined Fioneer 3 years ago. Yeah, but before, for 15, 16 years, I was a partner at a SAP IT consulting firm, and there I was responsible first for some business in Europe, but then I actually expanded to Asia. I lived in Singapore there for 2 years, and then I moved to the S and took over North America. And I always was in the challenge of starting small and how do you grow business, right? Even so, we had a very close relationship with SAP already in the US, in Germany. It doesn't one-to-one translate into business relationships in other regions, right? If you look at consultancy, it's mainly a people's business, right? Especially if you start small, people don't buy the brand, they buy the people and the success they had previously.
Okay, it's interesting. So, if you would be thinking about those people who are starting those tiny, small IT consulting companies, maybe they don't have as many, like as much relationships and so on. Where would you start, or what could?
Yeah, so I think
Yes.
it's twofold, right? So
Mhm.
you have to have a profile, right? So I'm not a big fan of people who, when they have a customer, tell the customer I can do everything, right? So nobody's good at everything, right? And usually you're good at what you like doing, or you like doing what you're good at, right? So especially if you're small, you need a very sharp profile. And then it's very tough to do it directly from college, but somehow you already know some people from your previous work, and then it's making them successful or actually having a value proposition of why you can make people successful. Yeah, and in general, if you work with the big vendors, they categorize their partners more or less in three big categories. There's the go-to-market sales partners. You're most likely not going to be one of these. Yeah, and then there's the content partners, and then there's the delivery partners. Right. So content partners is, as I said before, like the big software vendors, they usually have like a toolbox, right? But if you can make a special hammer for the industry, they are looking for to have partners in, then you have a proposition. Why does SAP tool work better with your content to solve a certain problem in this industry?
Could you give like any example to this, just to picture it better?
Yeah, if it's it might be regulatory
Hmm.
requirement, or if it's I mean, I only know banking, right? That's my background. But if there are special things about know your customer, about risk management. If you have a smart idea or use case how to use AI, and you say, okay, this runs on SAP's data model, or this runs together with this shows why SAP's cloud strategy is more successful, then you usually get an entry into this big ecosystem. Yeah, yeah. So it's all about creating content. They all are good of having data models or collecting data, but how do you actually use the data? Yeah, what use cases are there? Can you combine regulatory reporting with the data in an SAP system? Can you identify better customers? Yeah, so you have to have a story. Yeah. Um,
And when you say create content, what do you mean? Like what with the
so
content?
actually,
Hmm.
it's either configuration
Hmm.
or in some certain cases even add-ons, right?
Hmm.
So that is the main route to create noise. Yeah,
Hmm.
or you've been you've been convincing on when SAP's customer buy the software, that you can show them that you have an accelerator, how to deliver the software, how to get an implementation project cheaper and still in quality done, right? So this is more on the delivery partner side. Yeah, why are your IT consultants as efficient as other ones, but they can do it in 50% of the time because you have a smart way of addressing it. You can reuse implementation
You could also
content.
build some tools, right?
You
And
can build some
you
tools.
could share them for free. I think we talked about it earlier, that you could build something and just put it out there for people to use.
Correct. Or if you can actually run nice demos, industry-specific demos, that's always something where the big mothership, SAP or the big, or I'm sure Oracle as well, are looking for to help people make their tools look more shiny and better. Yeah.
So when you talk about the profile and the specialization, or I guess a niche, you talk a lot about being very industry focused, like really understanding one specific industry well. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I think the broader you get, the more commodity you get, right? And as especially at the beginning, if you're in a commodity business, you make a lot of money by high volume transaction, right? That's probably not where you start, right? So you need to have a profile to charge a premium, yeah, or to make to go into the higher daily rates, right? This is where you make the money, especially if you only have 2, 3, 4, 5 people. Yeah, I always recommend getting up to 10 quite quickly because one is on vacation, 2 are sick, right? And you need roughly 70% utilization to be profitable. Yeah, you're in a business where you have to pay payroll first, and then the customers pay you. So you have to somehow keep the ship rolling.
Keep the lights on, right?
Keep the lights, keep the flow going. Yeah.
So it's then about being as niche narrow as possible. Could that be also something else, like another dimension, like instead of industry or niche, like
technology, of course. If you are at the moment have the top of the spear AI knowledge in a certain industry, that would help you as well, right? So, if it's around technology, that's something, or if it's a new regulatory requirement coming out, yeah, or yeah. So I'm not sure if you can get the magic sauce going to run profits. So we came from the so I played most of my life in this space more around if regulators really push you to comply, how can you really quickly comply? And that's one good thing is companies are always, or banks and insurance are not really happy to spend a lot of money on IT. But once the regulator actually on your back, then
they kind of have to.
The money or the urgency is there. Although we try to get our clients more and more into proactive thinking, get your data clean, get your reporting, because emergency room medication is usually much more expensive than preventive care. Yeah, but this mindset is only in certain regions, certain industry really yet. We still see lots of clients burning a lot of money because suddenly an issue happens and they need to throw money and people had a problem. Yeah.
And so I've seen also oftentimes it could be a mix of technology and industry niche. Like in SAP, there's some modules like retail module. It's pretty connected, right?
Correct. So you need to, you're not going to develop a new SAP model for an industry which they don't have, at least not at the beginning, right? So you need to look at the existing ones and build on top of those. If it's either reporting content, if it's implementation, accelerators, if it's demo landscapes, but you need to, you need to work around this, right? If you decide to be an IT consultant company, which is focused on one of the big vendors, right? You could also say, okay, I'm actually data analyst or very data specific, but this is a slightly different angle, and I think it's a bit more complex than piggybacking on the big vendors at the beginning.
Is there any other dimensions than technology and industry? And by the way, one of the companies we work with, they focus only on retail and only in luxury retail and only in France. So I feel like this is exactly what you're talking about, just specializing on those dimensions. Is there any other ones?
No, then it's more if it's strategy or if it's actually delivery or run, right? So usually you talk about there's a strategy and then there's change the organization, then there's run the organization. So you can also go alongside that value chain. If you'd rather be more into, okay, here's the IT strategy, your cloud strategy, AI strategy for the next 5 years, but then you're competing against the big consultant companies who are up there. But there are niches where good people, especially with industry background, are very, very valuable in doing IT strategy work. Yeah. And then there's the change the business of the house. That's your typical implementation projects. But then there's the run, right? The operational perspective. How do you set up a target operating model? How do I do my system landscape strategy? How do I do testing? Can I go into automatic testing? What's my release cycle? So there's a lot of content in there as well. So you need to find your industry, your tool set, and where you are on that scale of the value chain. Yeah?
And then this would be everything we just talked about, right? That would be like the stage number one, right? 0 to 10, finding your focus, finding your, let's say, market positioning. And then we talk about the next stages for the company. Can you share those stages the way you see that?
Yeah, so I've been successful in getting or being part of success in getting companies up to 3, 4, 500, and now joining Fioneer, we're above this. But usually you see that if you're below 50, below 100, everything is very familiar, right? You know the people. But of course, first you start up with 10. Those are that's the inner circle, right? Then you start growing. You start thinking about probably bringing in some people freshly from college or the university, try to build the talent, because you want to pay your first 10 people more money every year, right? But you most likely will not get the rates higher, right? So you need to start getting in a model where you make more money with the younger people in
Right.
order to still
So you
keep
can
your
grow and learn, and you can also save a little bit of money because it's kind of hard in the beginning to be able to afford experts right
Yeah,
off the
but you
bat.
also have
Mhm.
already 10 employees and they
Right.
kind of expect a raise or more
Right.
bonus or something. So you want to give them raises, but you cannot always like one-to-one then increase
And you
the
want to
daily
keep them
rate
in the
you charge.
company, right? You don't want them to like go and look around for some extra projects, right? You want them ready on the bench.
Correct. You can and then the only thing is to get higher margin on the youngers. So you can reduce your margin by paying people more on the more senior stuff, right? But then the first break, or someone called it death zone in my career, is once you reach 100, then suddenly you don't know anybody anymore. And I actually had that one or twice when I came in the office and there were like 2 people sitting there. I was like, I've never seen those people.
Right.
Hi, I'm Sascha. Who are you guys?
Mhm.
Yeah. So then you're like, okay, we're getting to the point where not everybody knows the founder or the managing partner anymore. So you start having more hierarchy in there, and that can be a break, especially with the people who've been with the company a long time. They were like, oh no, I don't want to be part of a big company. I like my 20 to 30 people size, right? So this is kind of a death zone, and I saw lots of companies being sold when they reach this part, or they actually like then 25 people decide, okay, we make our own company. Suddenly they're down to 75 people, right? And it's usually the good guys who leave, not the ones who actually were like, they, I'm okay with, they're in the company, but they are not my lighthouse or my rock stars, right? So that's a tough situation. The next one is, I think if you get closely to 400, 500 people, then you start realizing that you actually have to have roles, responsibilities, processes, and the business is not so much people driven anymore. Like after the 100 people, you start having business units. That's my AI department. That's my finance and banks department. That's my finance and insurance department, right? So you start building smaller companies in the company. And with 500, it's just process, it starts process dominating. And that's the next point where people are like, okay, now we're becoming bigger and bigger, and I don't have the feeling I'm a valued employee anymore, but I'm just a point in a process change. So you need to really invest into the people and keeping the culture, growing a DNA that people become attached to.
Like identity as well.
Yes, and
Mhm.
they need to be proud and need to be happy to work for you, right? Most likely they can get paid the same or more somewhere else. Like, why are they working for you? Right? Do you give them the security? Do you give them the feeling that they are valuable? Do they have the feeling that they're growing something together? Right. So I think
There's
that's
like
the
a career
spirit.
development plan ahead, things like that.
Yeah. Although I think I've never had a good career development plan, but the really big companies, they do have people who get us.
Or at least you feel like there is something ahead that's waiting
so
for
with
you.
me, I never had any career coaching. When I joined the group, I was in my first company. We were like 20, 25 people. SAP services we were called back then. And
Where was that?
in Cologne, Germany.
That was back in Germany.
Back in Germany. But I realized quite quickly that if I would go the common route and just wait for time to move up, that's not the career path I was envisioning for me, because there were like 20 people before me in that company who would probably get promoted before I get promoted. So I actually got, we were very early already development partner of SAP. So for us, it was quite easy. So we were in the development, seeing how the new products came, and we could help SAP roll out their products to the markets, right? But I got actually a little very focused niche where I was a developer in, and I used this to say, hey, I'm actually flexible. I can be somewhere tomorrow in the world and help you guys sell the software if you need someone who can talk about the software, because they had no clue yet how to upscale their sales teams in the regions. So I helped do this.
So can you talk more about that? What did you do? How did you do
that? Let's say SAP actually releases a new model for an industry or for a special regulatory requirement, which it was in my case. And all worldwide in the regions, banks are asking, hey, do you guys have a solution to help us actually fulfill those requirements, or to answer those? And this local sales teams, they are not trained on this. And then they call, in this case, Waldorf, and Waldorf says, yeah, we're going to send someone crazy who can be at many points at the same time. No, but this is how it works, right? They ask the fields, they ask support, or the regions ask for support, and then especially in new content, then Waldorf can send people.
So last time we had lunch, you were saying that you have those scrappy approaches to sales early on, right? Obviously not anymore, where you were standing in front of some kind of like conference lobby and just like grabbing people. Was it at
I did this until 3 years ago, right?
Oh, okay.
So it's basically, when you are a smaller partner, you still want to go to the flagship events, right? But the salespeople, they're super busy with the partners, the clients are there, right? So for niche delivery partner, there's usually not much time. But I at least knew some faces of the industry. So I was always sitting in the lobby or at the hotel bar waiting for those people who show up after the official day ended. And then I tried to say hi and make my elevator pitch, why we are important and why I can help, or who I am, So even in the SAP ecosystem, yes, I was known to some people maybe in Germany, but not so much in Singapore, Hong Kong, or Korea, or in Indonesia. Yeah, so you always have to make a case for yourself and get your profile over. And why are you helping people to be successful?
Any other scrappy sales strategies like that? This is pretty cool, by the way. Just stand there, even if you cannot, hypothetically, if you cannot afford to get to a conference, right? You technically don't even need a ticket, right? You could just stand there.
I never got a ticket to expensive. I just sat outside.
Because you can listen to the lectures, or you can just actually network and make something out of it, right? So it's the most efficient thing anyways.
Correct. And there's only dedicated hotels where people are in, right? So you just hang out around there. You look at breakfast if you see familiar faces, right? Then I know that in Orlando, the conference center had like a little cafe where I always used to hang out, or in Las Vegas, there was a hotel where there was like the coffee shop where everybody hang out just outside the conference location. So I always was hanging around there to introduce myself. And then once people start talking, once you make one person more successful, it's much easier.
What do you mean? Like once you make one person?
Yeah, but then he introduces you. It's like, hey, this is the guy who made me successful. Remember when I told you about this client? Then success spreads. Yeah, people like to talk about how successful they are, and if you are part of their success story, it gets
you mean
easier.
like once you engage with them, and then you actually have a project, and then you
correct.
Make them
so you made one person successful on his projects, and then.
And what do you mean one person? Like a company that's a client?
No, let's say a VP of finance, right? So you need.
So he can meet his KPI. Sorry.
Yeah. So he has now a finance project, and then if he works with you and he gets becomes successful. It's good for his career, right?
Right.
So, and then if he talks to peers or friends on a conference, he said, "Hey, this is Sascha. We worked with him. Great
So they
guy."
pull you up, right? Over the time, over your
Yeah,
career.
and they share their people, right? So everybody likes to share their success, not so much their
Failures?
failures.
Right. How about other Scrappy sales strategies? Have you done anything else like that?
No, it's mainly it is network.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually been on golf courses and did a deal on a golf course, so that's not just it's not just an urban myth, but yeah, it's played. So it's funny. So even in my personal network, I always looked out for when I meet new people. What is their background? Be interested. You never know when you meet those people again. So I met some clients through my soccer team when I played soccer. So it's
that's the FC Cologne, or
well, FC Cologne is my professional soccer team I support. I never played on that level.
Congrats on the winning, right? That's
yeah, they won. They won on the weekend. Finally back in the first Bundesliga. First game, first win. Can't ask for more. Yeah, no, but it's your social network, and that's what I tell my younger employees as well. Your social network grows with you. Right? Maybe there was a guy I met in my very first 6 months on the job, lost track a little bit about it, and now you see, oh, he's actually working in a bank. Let's reconnect. Yeah, stay connected to people, be nice to people. It usually pays
and give
back.
it 10, 15 years, and then you're good. Joking a bit, but
now maybe there are some people out there who's look at YouTube and suddenly see my face and they're like, "Hey, I know."
Right. It was like, oh, I remember that.
Maybe I
person.
take Sascha again. Yeah,
right. So I was interviewing Y Combinator alum Emmy Chang the other day, and then we were talking about GTM, and she said that in her eyes, GTM is a lot about just being 5% better than anybody else because most of the people are lazy. And it sounds like a little bit similar to what you said. Like you put yourself out there, you go to those conferences, you stand there. What do you think about this sentence? Just be like 5%, 10% better, be more aggressive.
Effort pays off.
What was that?
Effort pays off.
Effort pays off.
So people see when you're passionate about it. When people see when you're convinced of what you say, right? I'd always try to be true to myself, right? So I would be a crappy salesman of things I don't believe in.
Right. You would not come across authentic.
No. So it's if people see you believe in what you say, you're passionate about it, I think that's already quite a bit. But that's probably the 5% which other people do not. And then it's a bit who read the room. What person are you working with? Yeah, especially if you talk about the US, where sometimes people's careers at stake with projects, right? So you need to give people the confidence that you are not just another guy, that you really want to make them successful, that you know your shit. Sorry. Yeah, but that you actually know what you're talking about. Now in my age, I can say that I like to talk about my success, but I actually also like to talk about the failures I've been part of, because then I can tell you, hey, I at least know some pitfalls, right? So this has become my pickup line for the last 5-6 years. I also have the scars of projects which have failed, right? So that becomes easier than when you're a little bit more experienced to say, okay, I help you prevent to do the same pitfalls than the projects which I was part of, which failed. Yeah, so this is. It's also part of the journey, right? Not everything is a success. Maybe to the stakeholders, maybe at the end, politically, everything is branded as a success. But there are many projects who start with a scope which gets reduced, which gets twisted. At the end, it is claimed as success. But if you look on with what goals they started, there's not everywhere a check mark, right?
So I remember last time we talked about different ways of acquiring customers, and you talk about partnerships directly with SAP or partnerships with big consulting firms.
Yeah. So if you look at the big four, big five, how many are there? There are more out there, right? So there are big IT consulting companies who, same thing as with the software vendors, who are fulfilling a huge need for IT consultants, but they're not specialized in the industry. So for an IT consultancy, it's very important for me, in my belief, to combine industry expertise with the tools which are out there, right? And then you can go to one of the big transformation specialists and say, hey, we can be your white knight and give you the credibility of talking this specific problem in this industry. Just embed us in your team. We help you sell, and then we jointly deliver the project, right? You can send 100 people. I send 5. I'm happy. Yeah. So this is another strategy to actually try to connect into the world of the big IT transformation and consulting companies. Yeah. Or in the case, if you're doing finance and regulatory reporting, it's the big audit firms as well you can chase down.
But it's tough for small players starting out, right? They need to go directly.
No, honestly, I think actually the big consulting companies is easier, because at the end of the day, there are companies of companies of companies of companies. And then there's one partner who is responsible for a certain account and one partner maybe for the industry. And then they break down into the industry and special problems. You just need to find your guy.
So the only thing is that your margin gets shaved off a lot in the chain.
Well, no, that's no. If you want to go to market with one of those big companies, you have to identify the guy who's responsible for your problem.
Mm-hmm.
Or for your industry, and then say, okay, I can make your industry bigger. You don't start with the CEO of an Accenture and talk to him, right?
Mm-hmm.
You
right.
need to find the partner.
No, but what I mean is, like, when this company that's a some kind of consulting firm, that they are the ones winning the project and they give you part of the project.
Yeah, but
work,
they
and so
also charge. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so this is now pricing strategy,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you, of course, you have to know. I was going to say you have to know what your costs are, but honestly, that's more complicated. So I'm not ever sure if we 100% knew what our costs were. But you have to have a good feeling of what is your price you're willing to work for. You have to remember that buying a project will not help you. Once you establish low rates, it's nearly impossible to increase your rates again, right? Because they knew you worked for them before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you have to stand your ground. Yeah. Just don't go in there, okay, I work for any money just to get this project. Nobody cares. That's what they're going to offer you the next time as well. Yeah. So you need to really make sure that you get your pricing structure. And then you should not care if they double that price, if they add 10%, you're not going to get their rates because you don't have the brand.
Mm-hmm.
You need to make sure, what is your price? What is the price you feel comfortable with? Yeah. Then you have a range. Of course, there's some negotiation. Everybody likes to negotiate. Yeah, but at one point, I'm a small company. This is what I need. Otherwise, I cannot do business.
So for those smaller players, you would think that they should go to those consulting firms and partner with them rather than go out and search.
I would do
contracts.
both. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's you have 3 sales channels, right? You have you have the software vendor, you have the big IT consultancy companies, and then you have your personal network. Yeah, and others like LinkedIn, or maybe you get lucky, or other social media, but it's usually software vendor, the big partners, and then your personal network. Those are the 3 channels you can sell through. Mm-hmm. And each needs to be played a little bit differently.
Any tips on how to play each of them?
Well, I already talked a little bit about it. Yeah. So, mm-hmm. Yeah, but first define what you're selling. What is the problem you're solving, right? So, and this, I didn't talk about this. So, the best thing is, and this is where you can help the big software companies. If the big software companies, and this is why Fioneer now actually exists, they describe their product, and then you have a CIO or you have a CFO sitting there. It's like, how does this product help me, right? But if you can describe how you're solving the problem, and not describing what the product does, but you can, by explaining how you solve the problem, tell or explain how the product is helpful. That's much better, right? So if you listen, understand, and then help solve a problem, that's the way to sell it. Yeah? Don't tell this is the best large language model, or this is the best AI agent out there because we have these tokens, blah, 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 blah. How does this help me? Yeah, how does this solve my problem? So you usually get like 30 minutes, an hour for your sales pitch in bigger organization. And you don't want to confuse them with too much detail about your product. You want to show how you actually solve their problem.
And then just to finish off those stages, you were talking about of growth of the company. So you see this as 0 to 10, then you see this 10 to 100, and then was like 100 to 500, right?
Yeah.
And this is those are the transformations that
Yeah, I
will be
think there
going
are some
through.
intermediate steps where you can say, like with 25, nothing is familiar anymore. Suddenly we have to have assistants who do payroll and everything. So it's actually funny, when I started the US, I was actually doing the expenses for the 5 people I had in the US, right? And you know how in Europe we say 2,5, and here they say 2.5, like when you do decimal spaces.
Yeah.
So I had an Excel spreadsheet with all my my expenses, and I wanted to send $2,400 to one of my consultants. So I had 2,400 in my Excel. I was pasting it, and I was sending out the wire, and suddenly $240,000 went out, and I didn't even know
It
I had
actually
that.
did?
Yes,
Oh
and
my
I
God.
had
Oh no.
on that day, one of my biggest client actually paid their invoice, and so all my money was gone. Just because I wanted except of 2,400.35, I put 2,400,35, and then it put another zero, and then all my money was. So it took a while to get.
That is crazy story.
So if you go to regions, you need to understand what the decimal symbol is.
I know. I was confused so much as well with those decimal numbers, those dots and commas. What are other interesting cultural differences? You've lived in Asia, you've lived in Singapore, you've lived in Germany. Obviously, that's where you're from. You now live here in the US.
Yeah. So for me, it's mainly in it's there are cultural differences, and honestly, when in my previous employer, when we looked at regions, we had certain criteria. Language, do we understand the language? If you work in China, Japan, you always have a translator with you, and if you have a very nice 20-year-old girl trying to explain higher financial mathematics to a client, it doesn't always fly.
In China, you said?
Yeah, China. For me, it wasn't Korea, but I was trying to explain hedge accounting was one of the things, and you have to do some financial mathematics with it. And I was on the whiteboard, and she was like talking, and I could see nobody had a clue what was going on. So it is actually language. Also, daily rates, especially if you look in Asia. So I spent so much time in Malaysia trying to sell a deal till I realized there are companies who, even if we go in with a very, very strong price, low cut price, they undercut us by 1/5, right? So there are some regions where if you don't have a big local team, there's no way as a Westerner you can make money.
Because they can just make it so much cheaper, right?
It's so much cheaper, yeah. And
there's like, especially if it's like South Asia, right? South Asia, Southeast Asia. Yeah. Isn't there like the entire like SAP street in India? Somebody showed me that before. There's like, it's just like a bunch of those outsourcing centers.
Well, so I think there's a lot, nearly every big IT company has their people. So we have with Fioneer, we have teams in Bangalore and Pune as well, but which we took over from SAP. So there's already a very solid and strong IT base. But if you go into the not so much developed countries, if you go to Vietnam, if you go to a certain degree, the Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, it's still different. Yeah.
And then, so just coming back to the girl in China, so people just didn't like understand her, or was it just because the Chinese?
She had no idea what I was talking about, and she had to translate it from my bad English to in this case Korean. So it was actually quite funny. And then if it's financial math, and it
so it's like a language barriers with financial math, and then you have like an intermediary person that might or might not interpret it in the right way.
There's a nice movie, Lost in Translation, from I think the 90s, and there's like one scene and it exactly happened like this to me as well. So, but also there, it's they like to do business with their own people, so you have to have a local business partner who helps you sell.
Yeah. You're talking about like Korea or China, South Asia in general.
Much, but it's to a certain degree that is true with every region. I always tell my people, so even in multinational companies, if you have a party at the end of the day, the table who drinks beers, the Germans drink with the Germans, the Brazilians with the Brazilians. Yeah, so it's you kind of feel a little bit more home when you have your culture around. Yeah? Then Germany overanalyzes everything. So until a project gets going, a lot of money gets spent on pre-projects, which is not bad for a consulting company because you can make money with
Because
it.
you bill for the hourly anyways.
Yeah, but it takes a little bit slower. In the US, it's more, there's a problem, we throw money and people. Yeah, so I had one client here who said, oh, we have a problem. I need 10 more of your people. It's like, okay. So I can send you 10 people, but if they show up on Monday, what are they going to do? We'll figure that out. Just we need the people. I said, okay, but what? Okay, I'll send you the people. Or shall we send 1 or 2 people first and they look and what we need to do? No, we need the people. Like, okay, then you get the people. Yeah.
So it's like a good thing and a bad thing, right? Because things are moving faster here without overthinking, but at the same time, that causes a lot of
talking
issues,
from a
right?
German perspective, it's not always highly efficient, but it also works, right? But it's the people I work with, they are highly motivated. They want to work, right? Nobody wants to sit in an office, wait 3 days for a laptop, and has nothing to do, right? So, yeah, we've managed it by now a little bit better, but it was a typical scene on or a very dramatic scene of how some US projects are being run. Yeah.
They just like jump the gun and things a lot.
There's a problem. We need people and money to solve the problem.
But it sounds like a good thing for the business if you are the one on the other side, or can it backfire?
Yeah, no, it's so honestly, I don't know which one is more at the end. I know which one is more efficient, but I don't know which one is more cost effective at the end of the day. If I just get something done very quickly, but it costs a little bit more, or if I have analysis paralysis and it takes me 3 years to get little things done, right? So I've never made the math, right? I made money in both scenarios.
I talk a lot with people about it, and I talk with a lot of Americans and Germans and a lot of Europeans, and it's typically that let's say German or European processes seem to be more efficient and more stable, but then Europeans always tell me that, yeah, but then in the end of the day, somehow US is more innovative. And then we talked about how things in the US are where you start Waymo, the self-driving car, and in Europe, they would probably never agree to that before it's tested. And then Waymo crashes a couple of times into like a street lamp or whatever. And they're like, all right, we have to fix it. So it's more there's more innovation, but at the same time, things just like break faster.
Well, it's called analysis paralysis for a reason, right? Once the processes are there, they're mainly maybe highly effective processes. But even now in the German companies I work with, and even with my new employer with Fioneer, and I really like my our founder for this. He says, I don't need perfect processes. I need processes which work for 80% of the time. For the 20%, we'll do exceptions. Right. And I really like this approach.
Like a mixed approach.
Yeah. Before I was in a company which tended also to overthink or overanalysis. Also over engineering to find a process which fits nearly 100% of the cases. But I think the approach we have at the moment actually works quite well. But also we are smaller size, right? I think that approach still works for 1,300 people. Let's see if we ever get 10,000 people, if that still works, if there's still a quick exception for if a process is broken, right? In general, you see that if the companies get bigger, processes become more important and exceptions are harder.
What are some other things you've learned about doing business here in the US versus, let's say, Europe?
In Europe, it's networking and keeping a relationship with the client is easier. And I had cases where I said, okay, I help you out in this project, but you help me out in the next project. Because I knew this guy's going to have a next project with this company because they're going to stay 20 years for the company. In the US, it gets more that some of those projects are basically the next step to a bigger career for people. So they deliver a project and then they move to the next employer. Yeah, so it's very tough to build a relationship. You can build the relationship to the person, but not to the account. So in the US, everything is much more personal based than actually account based, if that makes sense, right? Because everybody seems to be already on the on the search for the next big opportunity. Yeah. And you need to keep up with the people, which on the other hand is actually quite helpful because I have one lady in my network where I helped her be successful at 3 different accounts. Yeah, so you can also follow that person around.
So to summarize most of the things we talked about here, a lot of the strategies that you talk about are about building actual network and nourishing this network over the time and over the years. Would that be like a fair summary of most of the things
Yeah,
that you
but
said?
building the network is based on your content and value proposition. Nobody
Mhm.
just likes you because you're a nice guy. Yeah? So there needs to be
Mhm.
your content and your profile first. And not everybody likes me, right? So humans are different. So I'm sure there would have been another version of me who
Mhm.
has a different trait set who would have been successful differently. Yeah. So I'm not trying to tell now everybody they need to be like me, yeah, or like what we did. That's just my experience, but I know that there are way different people in the world. I studied physical chemistry, yeah, so I know that there are very very strong and great people out there who are not as fluently in building networks, but they are so highly skilled and they have a different way of networking as well,
Mhm. Like,
or
mhm.
keeping their social connections going.
Like in what way? Like, what do you mean? Like, how would they do that? Like through.
Much more through content. So
Mhm.
I'm a guy who likes socializing, but I mean, you do hackathons, right? So
Mhm.
I'm sure there are people who do theoretical chemistry modeling hackathons, and they connect through this. So they go much more a content based route on connecting with people, and then they follow great minds, right? So why are only sports stars
Mhm.
uh, like the stars of one industry, sports, right? And you see it a little bit now based on AI, right? So if you talk about the Google 8, most
Mhm.
people know who they are, right? So there comes to be more famous person besides sports, and you see this even with the salaries which are being paid, right? I actually, on the way here, I listened to the New York Times podcast, yeah, and they
Mhm.
were talking about this sports spottification of other industries, where suddenly top stars in a certain content area are being paid $200 million in AI, for example, right? So this is also a way of, if you publish papers, if you do podcasts, if
Mhm.
you try to get your content out there, that you can build your name for your industry, and that pays off, right? So hopefully we see more spottification of great minds beside great athletes. Yeah.
And I did definitely see that. And I also go to some hackathons where not just GTM hackathon like we host, but I go to GT like hackathons where we code and just try to build something. And that's where I met founders of pretty large and successful companies who are incredibly smart. And those are people you don't just outreach to. You could, but those are actually great ways of going about it. I met a lot of Stanford researchers we now work with through places like that, exactly like you say, through content, through solving challenges
Yeah,
together.
exactly.
That is really cool. Any last tips and things you would want to share? Any other advice that's on your mind, Sasha?
Success is a combination of skill and having the right timing and the right mind. Sometimes you have to take a risk, right? But success can come from different angles. But you have to believe in yourself, and if you're passionate about what you do, it will pay off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you're good at what you do, people will realize it. Does it happen in a month? I don't know. Does it happen in 2, 3 years? Most likely. Yeah, so you have to have some endurances, and I still shoot out emails and nobody answers me, right? So it's just like keep going. At one point in time, someone will see the value you bring to the table, if there's value, if you can make the convincing point, right? Of course, if you find a niche or something which there's only like
Mm-hmm.
one other guy in the world believing in it,
Mm-hmm.
then you might have a problem. So you have to have some idea of how big your market is, right? So, um,
I remember about endurance. I remember you did this fitness challenge for some time. You did like what was that exactly? It was like a transformation, right? It was like
yeah. So I think everybody, when they go go and hit 40, they start thinking about, I need to get fit. I want to outrun the 40. Yeah. So I did my
mhm.
my challenges. It was a Nicole Wilkins fitness transformation challenge, and I had to pre-cook all my meals. So I traveled quite a bit. So half my suitcase was Greek yogurt, was rice, chicken,
And then you just try to
broccoli.
answer questions at the airport. They're like, "What is this?" Just like,
Well, yeah, here's a pro-life tip. Yeah, so you're not allowed to have liquids going through security. So Greek yogurt is a liquid, but if you freeze it just
Interesting.
before you fly,
That's what I'm gonna do with my water.
Water, actually, I don't know, but
Okay.
maybe it works. But if you freeze Greek yogurt, you actually go through TSA without any problem. If it thaws in the meantime, you have a problem. You have to dump it. So you have to be. So San Francisco airport was sometimes a bit more critical, but when I flew out of San Jose, timing was okay for my frozen
Because it's
Greek
closer,
yogurt.
right? So you can just.
It's closer. Didn't have enough time to actually.
That's a great idea. Yeah, I also eat. It's like a faye, or I'm not sure how to pronounce it. The Greek yogurt. It's really good. There's so much protein. That's great. And the reason why I pointed at this, just before we wrap up, is because I've noticed the pattern that a lot of people who are persevering and actually achieving something are also part of challenges like that, whether this is like pushing yourself physically or pushing yourself in some area of life like that. That's why I thought it's relevant to mention when you talk about perseverance.
Yeah, I think that's the 5% more. Like, and I'm still like I like to do my geeky stuff. So I got into LEDs, Christmas lights for my house, right? And then, of course, it's not just one light. So now my whole house blinks accordingly to the music I play, right?
That is so cool.
And every time I have a new project, my wife is like, "Oh my God!"
So you like geek out like crazy, and you just set up the
Yes, and
entire
I can
house.
be very persistent.
Do people take
can
pictures? Like they stand in front of your house taking photos? That's really cool.
Yeah, but then I also realized that I'm a proof of concept guy. So I got it working, and then now like the first failure points come in, and now I'm lazy to fix it. So I like to actually see that something work. I'm probably not your strongest delivery guy. Maybe at the end of the day, I like proof of concepts. I like showing that things work, but then I rely on my team to actually finish it up.
And then just like make sure that it keeps going, and this is just working, and it's stabilizing.
Correct. So I mean, it's to a certain degree what you need to do, right? So fake it till you make it, right? So if you have a brand new idea, and that maybe is a good tip as well. You don't always have to have the perfect solution. You need to establish trust and convince a customer that you can actually deliver. Don't sell what you don't think you can deliver, but it doesn't have to be perfect at the moment you're selling it. There's a difference between ready to sell and ready to deliver.
Yeah, and I think it's a great thing to wrap up and summarize on. And this is a great balance, definitely. Just because I've seen so many people just like over promising things they don't know how to do versus also just having this analysis paralysis. So it's a great approach to this. Thank you so much. Thanks so much, Sascha. I really appreciate you joining us today. And thanks for sharing all this with us.
Good luck to everybody out there.